So I'm continuing to read The Life Divine by Sri Aurobindo. This is chapter 3, The Two Negations, part 2, The Refusal of the Ascetic. Part 1 is in 3 parts that you can watch prior to this video. First, a quote from the Upanishad, the Mandukya Upanishad. All this is the Brahman. This self is the Brahman, and the self is fourfold. Beyond relation, featureless, unthinkable, in which all is still. End quote. Aurobindo writes, and still there is a beyond. For on the other side of the cosmic consciousness, there is, attainable to us, a consciousness yet more transcendent. Transcendent not only of the ego, but of the cosmos itself, against which the universe seems to stand out like a petty picture against an immeasurable background. That supports the universal activity, or perhaps only tolerates it. It embraces life with its vastness, or else rejects it from its infinitude. If the materialist is justified from his point of view in insisting on matter as reality, the relative world as the sole thing of which we can in some sort be sure, and the beyond as wholly unknowable, if not indeed non-existent, a dream of the mind, an abstraction of thought divorcing itself from reality, so also is the sannyasin, enamored of that beyond, justified from his point of view in insisting on pure spirit as the reality, the one thing free of change, birth, death, and the relative as a creation of the mind and the senses, a dream, an abstraction in the contrary sense of mentality withdrawing from the pure and eternal knowledge. The sannyasin is a renunciate, someone who turns away from the world in order to proclaim the glories of the divine, of the spiritual, to pursue a life devoted to those ideals rather than to material ideals. What justification of logic or of experience can be asserted in support of the one extreme which cannot be met by an equally cogent logic and an equally valid experience at the other end? The world of matter is affirmed by the experience of the physical senses, which, because they are themselves unable to perceive anything immaterial or not organized as gross matter, would persuade us that the supersensible is the unreal. This vulgar or rustic error of our corporal organs does not gain in validity by being promoted into the domain of philosophical reasoning. Obviously, their pretension is unfounded. Even in the world of matter, there are existences of which the physical senses are incapable of taking cognizance. Yet, the denial of the supersensible as necessarily an illusion or hallucination depends on this constant sensuous association of the real with the materially perceptible, which is itself a hallucination. Assuming throughout what it seeks to establish, it has the vice of the argument in a circle, and can have no validity for an impartial reasoning. Not only are there physical realities which are supersensible, but if evidence and experience are at all a test of truth, there are also senses which are supraphysical, and can not only take cognizance of the realities of the material world without the aid of the corporal sense organs, but can bring us into contact with other realities, supraphysical and belonging to another world, including, that is to say, in an organization of conscious experiences that are dependent on some other principle than the gross matter, of which our suns and earths seem to be made. Constantly asserted by human experience and belief since the origins of thought, this truth, now that the necessity of an exclusive preoccupation with the secrets of the material world no longer exists, begins to be justified by newborn forms of scientific research. The increasing evidences, of which only the most obvious and outward are established under the name of telepathy, with its cognate phenomena, cannot long be resisted except by minds shut up in the brilliant shell of the past, by intellects limited in spite of their acuteness through the limitation of their field of experience and inquiry, or by those who confuse enlightenment and reason with the faithful repetition of the formulas left to us by a bygone century, and the jealous conservation of dead or dying intellectual dogmas. It is true that the glimpse of supraphysical realities acquired by methodical research has been imperfect and is yet ill affirmed. For the methods used are still crude and defective. But these rediscovered subtle senses have at least been found to be true witnesses to physical facts beyond the range of the corporal organs. There is no justification, then, for scouting them as false witnesses when they testify to superphysical facts beyond the domain of the material organization of consciousness. Like all evidence, like the evidence of the physical senses themselves, their testimony has to be controlled, scrutinized, and arranged by the reason, rightly translated and rightly related, and their field laws and processes determined. But the truth of great ranges of experience, whose objects exist in a more subtle substance and are perceived by more subtle instruments than those of gross physical matter, claims in the end the same validity as the truth of the material universe. The worlds beyond exist. They have their universal rhythm, their grand lines and formations, their self-existent laws and mighty energies, their just and luminous means of knowledge. And here, on our physical existence and in our physical body, they exercise their influences. Here also they organize their means of manifestation and commission their messengers and their witnesses. But the worlds are only frames for our experiences, the senses only instruments of experience and conveniences. Consciousness is the great underlying fact, the universal witness for whom the world is a field, and the senses instruments. To that witness, the worlds and their objects appeal for their reality, and for the one world or the many, for the physical equality, for the physical equally with the supraphysical. We have no other evidence that they exist. It has been argued that this is no relation peculiar to the constitution of humanity and its outlook upon an objective world, but the very nature of existence itself. All phenomenal existence consists of an observing consciousness and an active objectivity, and the action cannot proceed without the witness, because the universe exists only in or for the consciousness that observes and has no independent reality. It has been argued in reply that the material universe enjoys an eternal self-existence. It was here before life and mind made their appearance. It will survive after they have disappeared, and no longer trouble with their transient strivings and limited thoughts the eternal and inconscient rhythm of the suns. The difference, so metaphysical in appearance, is yet of the utmost practical import, for it determines the whole outlook of man upon life, the goal